What's up, contractors, and welcome back for another video. Today I'm going to discuss overhead. I know it seems simple, but you wouldn't believe how many contractors have no idea what the proper way is to calculate their overhead. So stick around, I'm going to show you how we do it with some real life examples, and hopefully it'll bring you some value in your business, alright? Let's get into it. So first and foremost, what is overhead? Overhead is all of the costs and expenses that you have for your business that aren't specific to a project. So anything that your business needs to run, like printer paper and like utilities for the lights in your office, maybe some advertising and marketing dollars, maybe some banking fees, any expense that your business incurs that isn't directly correlated to a project or a product that you or service that you provide. So it's all the things that your business needs, but that you don't really bill for. For example, if you're doing a basement renovation and you have to buy drywall and framing lumber and paint, etc., those are all costs of goods sold. That is directly related to your project, to that specific project. Things like marketing and advertising and printer paper and business cards and the utility bill for your office. These are all things that your business needs, that the expenses that are incurred by your business to keep things running, but they're not part of a project specifically. So that is what your overhead is. So why do we need to know our overhead? Guys, it's simple. You need to know what it costs to run your business every year. And if you don't know what your overhead is, that's one of those numbers you should know off the top of your head. What your overhead was last year, what it's going to be this year, your target for it. You want to monitor that. But more importantly, overhead is super important to know because we use it in our calculations for how we quote jobs. Guys, there are a few numbers that are very important for you to know as a contractor, and your overhead is one of them. You need to know how much it costs to run your business every day or every year, and it's a great performance indicator that you can track. You can measure it quarterly or yearly to make sure you're staying on track or nothing's way out of whack. There's another reason why it's super important to know your overhead, and that's because it'll allow you to quote your jobs much more accurately. And I'm going to go into this in another video in much more detail. But it's super important to know your profit margins, and you need to know your overhead in order to know your profit margins. And the great thing is, once you know your overhead, you're not going to be guessing. You're going to be dialed in, you're going to have a better sense of your business, and you're going to know exactly what your costs of goods sold are instead of guessing, which means that you're going to be able to figure out your gross profit margins. All right? So in the next video, we'll talk about gross profit margins and how that all ties into your overhead. But for now, suffice it to say that you need to know what your overhead is. You need to know what it costs to run your business every year or every month or every day. All right, so everybody's business is going to be a little bit different, but the overhead calculation is still going to be more or less the same. If you have any questions, give us a shout after. But essentially, the calculation is going to be the same for most of you, okay? Your overhead is going to be all the things that weren't for a job. So if you don't know, first of all, get on it. Second of all, if you don't know, go through your last year's books or your current books or your receipts or whatever and start figuring it out. All right, so let's go through your overhead list and see what might be on the list. First and foremost, this is the mistake that I see most contractors make, which is that they don't include their own salary on the overhead. So make sure you put your owner's salary in there, but make sure your business can afford it. There's no sense in putting a $100,000 salary in there if your business can't afford that. So make sure it's reasonable, but make sure you pay yourself, okay? All right, and I'll say one more thing about the salary thing. If you're one of these guys that's just like, oh, I don't know if I could pay myself this much, whatever the number is in here. If you want to put in, if you're sitting there going, oh my God, I can't pay myself 50 grand this year, or I can't pay myself 50 grand a year, then I would encourage you to put in there what it is that you need to make, what it is that is a fair compensation for you. Don't make it astronomical. Don't be egotistical about this. It's like put in a good, healthy salary that pays your bills, that covers yourself, that you feel good about. And I often say to people, what are you paying your best guy? Pay yourself a little bit more, right? So if he's making 30 bucks, pay yourself 35 or whatever. Anyways, put your salary in there right at the very top. Next, we're going to put in things like rent or parking or shop space, printer paper, utilities for the lights in your office, maybe some advertising and marketing dollars, maybe some banking fees, any expense that your business incurs that isn't directly correlated to a project or a product that you or service that you provide. You name it, your website, your stationery, all these things that aren't for jobs specifically, put them on there, and you'd be amazed at how big that list is. And once you get down to the very bottom, you add it all up, and that is your overhead. Say it with me, overhead. Okay? That's your overhead. Write your list, make a spreadsheet, go through your list quarterly or yearly, see if you can whittle that down a bit, see if you can shave a few expenses off here and there, but don't focus too much on that. Focus on getting a grasp of what your overhead is and then getting into a habit of checking it quarterly or annually to see where it's going, what it's trending, and if there's ways you can reduce this, okay? But just knowing what it is what's important here. And then in the next video, we're going to talk about how to implement your overhead in your bidding process or your quoting process to make sure that you're making enough profit for yourself, but you're not putting yourself out of the competition, okay? Hopefully that brought some value to some of you. If you have any questions, reach out. Have a great day.